In 1986, Alan Miles and Bruce Gordon founded the British company Miles Gordon Technology, and having produced Sinclair ZX Spectrum peripherals for a number of years, in 1989 they released the SAM Coupé. So, let's open it up, fix what we need to, and review this classic 8-bit retro computer. On the rear of the SAM Coupé, we have a brake button, two 7-pin DIN MIDI network ports, a DB9 joystick port, an 8-pin DIN mouse port, a reset button, a 64-way Euro connector, a 3.5mm mono cassette interface jack socket, a 5-pin DIN light pen, light gun and stereo headphone socket, the on-off switch, the SCART video and sound connector, and finally the 6-pin DIN power socket. The internal SAM drive is a Citizen 3.5-inch slimline disk drive, fitted with a VLSI disk controller interface. And although the SAM Coupé supports twin drives, this one has a blanking plate. Lifting the lid, we can see a T-shaped motherboard and two keyboard membrane ribbons. Carefully removing the motherboard, we can see we've got a video encoder, a 6-channel stereo sound generator, a custom integrated circuit, two 4-bit 256K of RAM, a Z80B CPU running at 6 MHz, and finally a 32K ROM for BASIC, the BIOS and SAMDOS. And looking closer and removing these labels, we can see copyright Miles Gordon Technology, SAM Coupé 1989, made in the UK. And on the rear is clean, but we've got some bodge wires for the left-hand SAM drive, and strangely, only Gordon 1989. Where's Miles? Due to the 64K memory limitation associated with 8-bit computers, the SAM Coupé memory map is split into 4 sections, each of 16K. And although highly configurable, each section is typically set up with ROM, basic programs with system stack and variables, followed by lots of user RAM. And depending upon the screen mode, which ranges from 6.75K right through to 24K, we would page in these screen modes so we could still use the underlying RAM. And if we needed access to ROM 1, typically we would page this in section D. And all of this is possible because the SAM Coupé splits the 256K of RAM into 16 16K pages, and of course the two 16K ROM images on this single ROM. So let's brush down the board and clean the connectors before we reinstall back into the SAM Coupé. But before we do, let's clean the base and add some period correct rubber feet. Removing the 4 screws allows us to remove the keyboard from the keyboard bay. And after giving it a quick clean and the reverse of the keyboard, we can see some rust spots. Having treated this with Rust Killer, it was now time to feed the keyboard back through the keyboard bay, being careful not to catch the two keyboard ribbons. And once secured, installing it back onto the chassis and reinstalling the right blanking plate and the left internal floppy disk drive. The SAM Coupé's power supply unit provides 5 and 12 volts direct current, but also RF video and mono sound from the 6-pin DIN power socket. Opening it up reveals some quite large capacitors, and given how old this unit is, I opted to go for a new power supply unit and video SCART lead. Having slightly modified the SAM Coupé's power supply unit to house the new power supply, it was now time to do the first power on test. Unfortunately, as the bottom left hand side of the keyboard was not responsive, it was time to purchase a replacement keyboard membrane and delve into our first montage. Upon its launch, a character called Sam introduced users to its capabilities such as basic drawing and early digital images. So let's set up this SAM Coupé and see what it can really do. As the internal floppy disk drive requires repair, I purchased this compatible floppy disk drive and network controller, offering up the internal floppy disk drive to the motherboard and securing it underneath to the main chassis. It was time to download, 3D print and locate the internal floppy drive fascia, which means that now hopefully we can load something from floppy disk to the SAM Coupé for the very first time. This is the Quasar pack containing the Trinity Ethernet interface, the Trinity boot ROM, and a 256k memory upgrade available from SAMCoupé.com. Carefully removing the original ROM and replacing it with the upgraded ROM 3, and fitting the additional 256K, we've now increased our RAM from 256K to 512 and from 16 16K pages to 32. Having located and downloaded this Trinity case 3D print design, I 3D printed it and secured it onto the Trinity Ethernet interface. Having connected this SD card and downloaded the SAMDisk Utility, it was time to open up the command line and run as administrator to provide you access to your devices. Identifying the SAMDisk exe, if we run this with the parameter list, we can see our device is number 3, which means we can now format disk 3 using SAMDisk format 3 and colon. We're now able to transpose disk images using the disk image name, followed by the device number and the record slot. In this case, device 3, record 1. Inserting the Trinity Ethernet interface into the Euro connector and inserting the SD card, we select record 1, rename it to Splat, and do a record listing. So now we're able to copy device 2's files, which is the SD card, to device 1, which is the single internal floppy drive. Rebooting the SAM Coupé with the new Quasar ROM 3, we select device D1, which is the floppy drive, and press F9 to boot. Connecting a network cable to the Trinity interface and inserting the Quasar software floppy disk, we're able to configure our network settings to download this music and game from the internet. And finally, let's have a look at some of the commercial games and demos which employed the 8-bit magic of the SAM Coupé.